Hey guys, welcome to my first episode of Haunted Histories, discovering America's dark past one state at a time. So in this first episode, we're going to kind of stay close to home. We're going to be starting with New York State, and I picked a place that was near and dear to my heart that I've always loved growing up, so I felt like why not start there? We're going to be talking about the Buffalo State Asylum for the Insane. This is located in Buffalo, New York, and construction began in the late 1800s. So there were a few designers on this. The biggest designer was Henry Robson Richardson. Him, along with the landscape artist Frederick Law Olmsted and Calvert Vaughn, they worked together to create this huge building in Buffalo, New York. So in 1865, New York passed a law stating that it wanted to incorporate more mental institutions into the community. There are a bunch of different areas around New York that they were thinking of adding these asylums, but they ended up going with Buffalo because of its close proximity to downtown, and at that time it was very rural, so they thought this was a good area for them to start construction. Construction started in 1872. The current plan was supposed to house less than 300 people, but it ended up housing about 600. So when it came to the floor plan of the building, Henry ended up going with a system of treatment developed by Dr. Thomas Story Kirkbride. This was inevitably called the Kirkbride Plan. So basically what the Kirkbride Plan was a center administration building, and then each side would come out like bat wings. This would be called the bat wing floor plan. So you would have administration in the building, and each wing would build off on either side after that. This system was very popular during the 19th century, between 1809 and 1883. This theory was developed on thoughts that this would heal mental illnesses. Being constructed the way it would allow for more light to enter into the building, as well as better circulation of air, which would be better for mental illnesses, as thought during that time. Even though the style was huge at this time, it was really expensive to build because this concept made it so each compartment had to have a lot of light, a lot of airflow, and in the end it would be an extremely huge building that they would have to be constructing and have to fill with workers that would cost a lot of money over time. The standard plan at this time would have 8 wings. Each section on either side would have basically its own separate unit. So you would have your common areas in there, your kitchens, things like that in each unit, and obviously each section would also have different types of mental illnesses within that area. The closest to the center, which is the administration building, would be patients with less mental illnesses, and then as you went out to the farthest end would be the more extreme mental illnesses, as they would classify it at that time. Also, these plans would be required to be on land at least 100 acres at a time. This would allow for the patients to be able to go outside and do work, as saying that the work would help with their mental illnesses. Getting outside, the sun, airflow continues that theory. Also, because of this time the area was rural, they said that looking up at mountains, looking up at things outside was also healing for the mental health. The rooms were said to be spacious and would have at least 12-foot ceilings. This would allow for only one person per room to live, so it wasn't supposed to be extremely crowded. It wanted to allow everybody to have proper care and be taken care of in these facilities. Men and women would be separated during this time. Women would be placed in the west wing, while men would be placed in the east wing. In November 15th, 1880, the first patient was admitted into this facility, but this was only to the eastern ward. The western ward wouldn't be completed until 1895. During this time though, the architect that was originally on this design would end up dying, and a new architect would take his place. This would be Green and Wick. So Green and Wick, they ended up trying to stick to as much of a concept and design as Henry did, but they did change a few things when opening up the western wing. Unfortunately, by 1890, it began to get extremely crowded in this facility. While it was supposed to house 600 people, it ended up over the years housing up to 3,000 people at one time. Unfortunately, as the time went on, this facility got worse and worse. In the late 1920s, things like insulin coma therapy, lobotomies, and electroshock therapy was being used in this facility, like all other facilities pretty much around the world. Obviously, I think we know what some of the other things are, but with insulin coma therapy, which I thought was interesting, was that they would administer small amounts of insulin to the patients over time and amp up the amount of insulin until they fell into a coma, and then eventually they would hopefully wake up. But this could sometimes lead to brain damage and a lot of other things that were not great. This was usually given to patients with schizophrenia, and while some would find some relief in this, it was never a good option. Also, this facility was known as having a high success rate because a lot of the people that went into this facility were actually not mentally ill at the time as it was. Obviously back then mental illnesses were on a wider spectrum and they thought that certain things were mental illnesses when they actually weren't. So the turnover sometimes was very quick, and so that's why this place was seen as that. Unfortunately, on February 7th, 1881, an article went out in Buffalo. The headline read something like "Brutes in the Insane Asylum: The Story of Severe Cruelty." This article would depict the severe abuse, terrible cruelty to loud patients, or patients who were too slow getting into the dining hall. There were rumors of black eyes, near drownings, forced sterilization, cover-ups, and even the staff talking about abusing or harming the patients. Years later, most of the land that the asylum was sitting on was sold to Buffalo State College in 1927, and this facility still worked as an asylum during that time. In the 1960s, 3 of the male wards was actually demolished and a new building was replaced in its path. Started to slow down at the asylum, and it ended up closing its doors in 1974. It was turned into a landmark, so it wasn't going to be demolished, but it remained vacant for many years to come. Over the last couple years, it's been revamped inside. People have went in and changed it and turned it into a hotel. 3 of the buildings have currently been repurposed for hotel use. It was once called Hotel Henry, and then it changed to its current name now, which is another hotel. You can still go there and have dinner there because there is a restaurant. You can also stay over, and they do tours into the rest of the abandoned building that they haven't repurposed yet. The current hotel is not looking into its haunted history. This is due to them wanting this to be more of a healing space for people who used to be here and have come here to visit, or family of members that used to be at this asylum and come to see where their family members used to be. So they want this to be more of a healing space rather than a haunted space. However, there are some tales about hauntings within the asylum. It is supposedly rumored that this hotel is haunted by the former patients that have died here. They like to roam the halls and also roam the tunnels underneath the building. Things like flickering lights, random voices calling out for help, objects being moved within the rooms, and cold hallways are all said to take part within this hotel. Like I said, this place really isn't pushing any of the haunted script, so there's not really much about it, and you would have to go and see for yourself if it's actually haunted. But I wouldn't put it past this place to be haunted, as a lot of cruelties happened here, unfortunately, and this was a place for so many people. I think this place has a really interesting past, and it's great to learn about it, especially something that's at a historic landmark that's going to stay around for a long time. So I hope you guys enjoyed this first episode. Next place will probably be a little bit more haunted, as I'm picking another place within the United States. I just felt I needed to pick this one because I've always loved this location. Even though there's not much on it about hauntings, it's really cool to learn about its past. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you did, give it a like, subscribe down below, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!